if not counterintuitive, with disapproval numbers now rivaling Richard Nixon's. Mr. Bush still nominated for his new CIA chief, a man almost guaranteed to draw a confirmation fight. General Michael Hayden, creator of the domestic eavesdropping program. Mr. Bush says General Hayden is perfect for the CIA, and perhaps he was chosen for elevation despite or because of a characteristic that is normally seen as a liability, his arguable willingness to thumb his nose at constitutional law. That notion has been suggested by the noted professor in that subject, Jonathan Turley, who will join us presently. Mr. Turley likens the Bush team, in fact, to The Sopranos at the end of his piece. Get criminal and get made. He cites other administration officials whose criminal acts or potentially criminal behavior have posed no barrier to advancement, like Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, who as White House counsel may well have been the architect of the kinds of torture, at least the legalese for the torture, that led to the Abu Ghraib abuses. As promised, we're joined now by the professor of constitutional law at George Washington University, Jonathan Turley. Thanks again for your time, sir.
Thanks, Keith.
Your joke about The Sopranos in the Chicago Tribune piece, timely, telling, it'll fire up everybody on both sides, but the argument beneath it is dead serious. From the point of view of the Constitution, the point of view of the law of the land, what are you seeing here?
Well, you know, this is a pretty impressive rogues gallery. You know, from his very first term, Bush shocked many people by reaching out to officials who had either been convicted or pleaded guilty to crimes during the Reagan and Bush administrations, and others who many felt should have been indicted. They included people like Elliott Abrams, who pleaded guilty to 3 crimes. They were misdemeanors. John Poindexter, who was convicted of 3 crimes. Those were thrown out on a mere technicality later. You had Otto Reich, who was accused of a domestic surveillance propaganda program. You have a very long list of people, and what emerged through the 2 terms was that people who seemed to be accused of violating the law had a rapid ascent in this administration. And one has to wonder whether this is suddenly a criteria, that the president likes people who are willing to go to the edge of the law and beyond it to achieve what he believes is a worthy purpose.
If it's personnel decisions, or if it's a president signing a statement relating to a law that basically says I'm not going to obey this law if I don't feel like it, or if it's something larger, more aggressive, domestic surveillance or any of these other things, where are the constitutional checks? Is that machinery still present? Is it still working? Is it rusted, or is it not working at all?
Well, it's not working very well. Many federal judges have, in fact, really brought the Bush administration up to the bar of the court, and they have, in fact, rejected many of the arguments, including the Supreme Court of the United States. But the real check and balance for this type of thing rests with Congress, and Congress has done nothing. Do you realize that Congress has not even held a substantive investigation of the NSA operation, an operation that most of us believe was criminal, that the federal law defines quite clearly as a federal crime? Now, instead of investigating that, the Congress actually gave the president a standing ovation during the State of the Union speech when he promised to continue to violate that law. When he said he would continue this program. And the people who were responsible for passing the law that he was violating gave him a standing ovation. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. But now we have the architect of that program who's been nominated to head the CIA. Now, that was not a natural choice, because if you look at his record, it was actually fairly mixed. We're talking about General Hayden. Mm-hmm. General Hayden's accused of wasting as much as $2 billion when he was at the NSA on a program called Trailblazer. Almost $2 billion. Normally, that would be an impediment to advancement.
I'm surprised you didn't get Secretary of the Treasury. The wartime argument that always comes back in these kind of debates about presidential powers. What's the history on that in terms of the Constitution and the presidents? Have presidents who have been seem to have stretched the Constitution, have they been investigated in wartime, even under the much stricter definitions of wartime we used to have?
Well, first of all, this president's theory of his power is now, I think, so extreme that it's unprecedented. He believes that he has the inherent authority to violate federal law. He has said that, not just in signing statements. In the infamous torture memo that Alberto Gonzales signed, it was stated that he could, in some circumstances, order federal officials to violate federal law. And this is consistent across the board with this president. Frankly, I'm not too sure what he thought he was swearing to when he took the oath of office to uphold the Constitution and our laws. I've never seen a president who's so uncomfortable in his constitutional skin.
All of this, Jonathan, has been likened to the swing of a pendulum, that this is Vice President Cheney, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, hearkening back to their days as rookies in the Ford administration, watching the fallout of presidential powers being cut back after the abuses of Richard Nixon. If that's true, if it is a pendulum, does the pendulum swing back? Can it? Will it?
Well, unfortunately, civil liberties don't swing back like other issues. Civil liberties is a very precious commodity. When you lose them, it tends to run out of your hand like sand, and it's hard to get it back. And that's one of the dangers here, that presidents, when they acquire power, rarely return it to the people. And so we have to be very concerned. This country is changing in a very significant way. And it's something that citizens have to think about, because if there is a war on terror, and I believe that we must fight terror, obviously, but we're trying to defend that Constitution. And we're really at a point where the president is arguing about his own presidential power in ways that are the antithesis of that Constitution and the values that it contains.
Constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley, as always, sir, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Keith.